From the man who made history and then dozens of epic movies, to a talent that shined bright enough to silence the haters, here's a list of biopics that need to be made immediately. Starting with the writer whose stories continue to inspire generations, Dr. Seuss. Now, this name's not out of place in Hollywood at all. In fact, his works have given the audience some of their most favorite tales. Just think about it, the Grinch is practically a cultural figure now. But there's one thing missing, a movie about the man who wrote all those masterpieces. They kinda had us excited by promising a Theodore Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss movie a couple of years back, and it wasn't even a vague sort of suggestion. Things were happening, y'all. For one, Steven Chbosky was all set to direct it. Now, you might remember Steven from The Perks of Being a Wallflower and Wonder. So, for sure, this was a dude with strong experience in bringing books to the screen. And what was more exciting was that many wanted Jim Carrey to star as the author. Jim would have made the project so much more awesome. He'd already worked with the author's characters. But this earnest adaptation of offbeat brilliance never materialized.
You wouldn't believe how much those little acts of kindness can add up to something truly glorious. So tell me, what's yours?
And there's no update on it so far either. Wake up, Hollywood. Now, speaking of authors that deserve a biopic, Maya Angelou. Okay, so I'll jog your memory a little bit about what a fireball of courage this lady was, and you'll see why it's about time she gets the Hollywood treatment. Now, Maya's entire life was a lesson in how to rise up with grace. Her ability to make it past difficult times with strength was and is a source of inspiration to many. And to be honest, her life was interesting too. It'd all make for a great story on the big screen. She was a poet, writer, and a civil rights activist. And here's the really awesome thing. She's most famous for the 7 autobiographies she published, the first of which was called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So an adaptation would know exactly where to go for the source material. Plus, her own words could add a depth that no other voice could. Also, her path to greatness was paved along with many odd jobs. Among these were fry cook, nightclub performer, and correspondent in Egypt and Ghana during the decolonization of Africa. And I'm just getting started. In one life, Maya seemed to have lived many. She worked with MLK Jr. and Malcolm X as well. Plus, she also recited On the Pulse of Morning at Bill Clinton's first inauguration. That made it the second inaugural recitation, since Robert Frost recited at JFK's inauguration in 1961. Her books continue to inspire despite efforts to have them banned.
Couldn't get it, so I refused to call her mother. I called her lady, and she accepted that.
Now next, it's Stephen King. Yes, it's another author, but King's got a totally different vibe. He's the master of horror, and his popularity is truly remarkable. But did you know that his real-life story is super interesting too? He wasn't always a titan in the literary world, but he wrote his way to it from a working-class background. Initially, he did a lot of teaching to keep afloat, and would write and sell short stories whenever he'd have time in between all of that. King was so unsure about his first novel that he had to be pushed by his wife Tabitha to finish it, and that effort gave us Carrie. So you know King's got some pretty solid life stuff for a biopic. And it didn't stop there. Even after his success, he bested decades of substance abuse and alcoholism. At one point, it was reportedly so bad he doesn't even remember writing Cujo. But now he's sober. Of course, another layer to the whole thing would be the criticism his work received from some too. Also, who can forget the incident of 1999 from his life, when a distracted driver almost ran King over? But the author went through a rigorous process of recovery, and his work's been giving people the creeps for decades now. Now, that's enough about authors. Let's look at a historical figure whose biopic could totally be a big hit. Theodore Roosevelt. A film focused on the 26th president of the US could totally be the next move, now that we've got one on Lincoln. Old Teddy had plenty of great moments in both his life and career. The story goes that once, he was shot while giving a speech, and the bullet got him right in the chest. But instead of getting to a hospital as quick as he could, Roosevelt decided to just go on delivering his speech like nothing had happened. Now tell me that's not the stuff of a strong biography. And I guess people caught on to the idea too. The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, a Pulitzer Prize-winning biography, was planned to be adapted into a movie by Martin Scorsese. Leonardo DiCaprio was set to star as well, but for some reason, the plan was abandoned. Well, now's as good a time as any to get back to the project.
Stumbled about, and I've always wanted to go there. I'm just fascinated. I've been trying to make it to Pompeii, but I haven't been there since 1970.
And if you think Teddy was hardcore, I've got another name for you: Christopher Lee. Yeah, he was Saruman, and you'd think the guy's movie career would be enough to land him in the pages of history. But the truth is, he was so much more than that. A film focused on the man would be a whirlwind ride of pure awesomeness. He got far too much done for one lifetime. Now, Lee was one of the most prolific actors to ever walk the earth. Franchises seemed to love him. From Dracula to Star Wars, he did it all. He was in 126 total movies, but remarkably, his real life was far more fascinating even than his career. As a young man, Lee was a witness to the last time that France used the guillotine. He also volunteered in Finland during World War II and served British intelligence throughout the conflict. He also started a heavy metal band and got a Billboard Top 20 hit at the ripe age of 91. And if you want to get into awards, Lee's got quite the list. From Lifetime Achievement to Knighthoods, Lee deserved them all. And we deserve a film about Christopher Lee, the man, the legend. And while we're on the subject of actors who've got amazing stories, there's also Ingrid Bergman. If you ever want to explore the golden era of Hollywood, you're going to come across this graceful actress time and time again. She was a part of some of the greatest films ever made. Bergman first became a huge star in 1942 when she did Casablanca. From there on, she did starring roles for Alfred Hitchcock in Notorious and Spellbound. She also got an Academy Award for playing a woman whose husband attempted to drive her insane. The film was so significant, it inspired the word gaslighting. But in her personal life, Ingrid was also gaslighted. But not by a man, no, rather by the media as a whole. When she was filming Stromboli in 1950, Bergman had an affair with the director Roberto Rossellini. She even gave birth to a son before she ultimately got a divorce. All of this resulted in a scandal so bad that Bergman was just sort of banned from Hollywood. Things got so heated that at one point, a US senator reportedly said that she was a horrible example of womanhood and a powerful influence for evil. Yikes! Anyway, Bergman worked in Europe before making an Oscar-winning return to Hollywood. Her incredible story even impressed the cynic Rick Blaine. And we need her biopic, because the world is never too short on stories where talent triumphs all. And that was all from my side about biopics that need to be made immediately.